Paula Reeder,
Here.
Bill Crowding remotely.
Bill?
I see him, raise your hand.
Unmute, Bill.
Technology.
Raise your hand, Bill.
Bill, can you hear us? Raise your hand if you can hear us. I don't think he can hear us, and we can't hear him. Bill, if you can hear us, raise your hand.
Can you see us?
I can't
He
tell
ought
if
to
he's
go.
talking or not because his name is over his mouth, the
I'll
script
call
there.
him.
What he ought to do is close out and sign in again.
He looks like he's waiting for us to get started, but he can't hear us.
I got him. Hey, Bill,
Hello.
there you go. Go again?
Yeah, what do you need?
Just, you're here. I think we're getting
I'm
this
here.
way.
Bill, can you hear us?
I'm just waiting for the microphone to come on. It's running slow.
Okay. You're present, though.
Present.
Okay, has anyone had a chance to review everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the August 1st meeting? If there are any corrections or comments?
No.
If hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to,
Make a
Cruise it.
motion that we accept the minutes as presented?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bill?
Aye.
All right, thank you. I'm going to turn you off now. You try to get in. Okay, our first application tonight, or today, is an Ag Preservation District application. This is a recommendation of the Board of County Commissioners, and the applicant Claude and Stephen Westcott.
Look, did you approve the minutes from the prior meeting?
Yes.
Just did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
Are there applicants here, or staff going to present?
I'll start with my presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Claude and Stephen Westcott wish to create an agricultural preservation district on their 120 acre farm located at 12982 Augustine Herman Highway near Kennedyville in the second election district. The farm consists of approximately 37 acres of cropland, 30 acres of pasture, and 57 acres of woodland. Approximately 71% of the soils are considered class 2 to 3. There's one dwelling on the property, and the farm is zoned agricultural zoning district and is within the priority preservation area. Is adjacent to over 7,500 acres of easements that stretch from the Chester River to the Sassafras River, and is outside of the 10-year water and sewer plan. The Agricultural Preservation Advisory Committee met and reviewed this application and forwarded a favorable recommendation to this body. I'm here tonight to ask that you send a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners for this district.
Thank you. Any correspondence?
No correspondence.
And are the applicants here or not?
Not tonight.
Okay. All right, questions for staff on this application? It's in the preservation area, adjacent to other preserves. And it's
Yes, I have a question, Bill. You say this is outside the 10-year water sewer plan,
That's correct.
but this property is very close to the Kennedyville Village, is that correct?
So within your packet, there's a map. It's outside of the village. I don't know approximately how far it is to the village of Kennedyville.
No, it's about halfway, but it's about 5 miles from Kennedyville.
It's 5 miles outside of Kennedyville.
And probably about the same to Galena.
Okay, that answers my question.
Okay, like I say, the Ag Preservation Committee has recommended approval. Anyone have any other questions or entertain a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for this application?
A recommendation to the board of the county commissions.
To present
This
it,
project.
okay, a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Preservation is becoming an issue in the county in terms of the amount of land that is actually sequestered from potential future development, especially land that's close to existing developable areas and municipalities. This property, preservation is also intended, as I read the law, to protect Class A, first-class agricultural land that's in agricultural production for the future, and I agree with all of that. This property has no Class 1 soils, 0. It is principally comprised of woodland and is not, except for a minor portion, less than a quarter, involved in actual crop production as opposed to grassland. That being the case, I find it difficult to justify putting this land in preservation, particularly since it fronts on a major thoroughfare in the county. And so I cannot support this application, approval of this application, for those reasons.
Couple things there. The pasture is cropland, and this is a priority preservation area. And the class soils, if they choose to go beyond this process, the bid process review is taking into account the class soils. They're ranked. There's a system.
And it's already been done.
They rank the whole, the system ranks them with other applications if they choose to preserve.
This is only the first step in a mouth application.
I understand that,
Create
but
district.
but I don't know of any historic district that has been denied a mouth application.
Historic district. I'm missing something.
Have there been, are you aware of any, Sean?
I can't speak to that. Perhaps staff can. I'm sure that everybody doesn't get funded in every round. I'm quite
Yeah.
sure of that. So just because you created a district does not mean that your application will be funded.
Well,
The ranking process, which
Do you
takes
feel-
into account some of the things that you pointed out. Class of soils, amount of ag land versus woodland, all those things are part of a ranking process then that determines whether or not they get a bid, whether, they may not.
Have any districts been denied a mouth easement that you're aware of?
I am not aware of any ag district applications over the last 25 years that have been denied. But I would also say that when staff meets with landowners, if a property doesn't meet those minimum criteria, then it wouldn't even come forward. So, but I'm not aware of any districts that have been denied based only on their location.
For the record, that was Deputy Director Carla Gerber speaking.
Do you feel that this property owner shouldn't have the right to preserve their land? I mean, you said that if there's an issue in the county, apparently that, I didn't know there was an issue in the county, that it's in a priority preservation area and the applicant requested it.
I understand that, and they're perfectly entitled to respect it. I don't have to agree that it's a good use of taxpayer funds to fund an easement on this property.
Well, they're not funding an easement, they're putting it in a district.
I understand that, but this is a precursor, and the general way things work here is that districts get approved for easements. And that is a fact. So
So you
you
don't-
have to be in the district
What
to
about the
apply for.
priority preservation area? You don't respect that as part of our county code? I'm missing something, that it's in a priority
I
preservation area.
don't think it's appropriate for you to be questioning how I feel about priority
Well, you
preservation.
brought it up as an issue. That's what I didn't know there was an issue. This applicant voluntarily wants to put their farm in a district in a priority preservation area, and it's recommended by the Ag Advisory Preservation Group. Everyone.
Well, if I don't agree with the Ag Preservation Board, I'm entitled as a member of this commission to say so. And I don't agree.
That's our discussion. Any other further discussion?
Joe,
Oh, go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Bill.
One thing you got to remember as well is it's part of the Kent County Comprehensive Plan to encourage ag preservation.
And I think we've done a great job of that. 35% of our ag land is in preservation right now.
And this particular piece of property is surrounded by over 7,000 acres of land that's already in ag preservation.
It doesn't necessarily mean we should do more.
Well, the motion's been made and seconded.
Any further discussion? Thanks. I'll call the question. Bill Crowdy,
Aye.
Jim Saunders,
Aye.
Saul Jones,
Aye.
Paul Rugi,
Aye.
Paul Reeder,
No,
and I'll vote with the affirmative. So we'll send a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners for this application.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Our next application is a major site plan concept review for Freedom Properties GOM LLC at 10568 Cliff Road, Chestertown. This is a planning commission review. Thank you.
Ready?
Yeah, thanks.
So Freedom Properties, GOM LLC, Great Oak Manor, is requesting a change of their special exception from a country inn to a retreat, as well as concept site plan review of a proposed accessory structure to be used as a demonstration kitchen and yoga studio. Great Oak Manor has been used as a country inn since 1984. The change to a retreat is to accommodate an expansion of amenities available to guests of the property for corporate retreats or small events which may not always involve overnight lodging by attendees. No expansion in the number of guest rooms is proposed. The applicant is working with the health department to determine the adequacy of water and septic areas. The proposed building has been located and designed with respect to the historic nature of the site and the surrounding area. The proposed use is in conformance with the comprehensive plan and complies with the spirit and intent of the land use ordinance. Staff recommends forwarding a favorable recommendation and suggests that the Board of Appeals may wish to give consideration to the following conditions. No more than 15 guest rooms are permitted without prior approval to expand the retreat use. No parking for events is permitted on Cliff Road. No maintenance facilities or equipment is visible from outside the property. A road maintenance agreement for Cliff Road is signed by all property owners and recorded, and limits on hours for outdoor events could be established. So the retreat designation has a series of specific conditions for the special exception in addition to the general conditions. And I will jump straight to those staff comments, which are on page 4 of the staff report.
Excuse me, Carl. Is someone on the line got an open mic or a background mute or could mute? Thank you. You didn't hear?
Just with the feedback, it was hard to
Oh, okay.
understand what she was saying.
Oh, you didn't hear Carla? Okay, sorry, Carla. I guess I'm just-
I'll
Give
give a
brief-
quick summary, and then I'll go into additional detail. So I just simply stated that Great Oak Manor is requesting a change of their special exception from a country inn to a retreat, and concept site plan review for proposed accessory structures to be used as a demonstration kitchen and yoga studio. Great Oak Manor first received approval as a country inn in 1984, and the change to a retreat is to accommodate an expansion of amenities available to guests on the property for corporate retreats or small events. I noted that a retreat designation has a series of specific conditions for the special exception in addition to the general findings for special exceptions. And I was going to go into the staff and TAC comments, which are on page 4 of the staff report for those retreat conditions. So it is noted that upon recordation of an adjustment of lot lines that is in process, the parcel will exceed 15 acres. There are currently 13 guest rooms with no plans for additional rooms. In previous decisions, the Board of Appeals has determined that public and governmental services are available and adequate. No substantial changes to the use of the property are proposed. The applicant has designed the proposed building in keeping with the historic nature of the setting and with respect to the character of the neighborhood. View corridors were given consideration in the placement of the proposed building, and the height does not exceed 38 feet. With the exception of an existing small wooden deck overlooking the bay, all structures are more than 100 feet from any property line. New amenities include a demonstration kitchen and yoga studio in the proposed building. Any additional amenities would require approval of an amendment to the special exception. More than 60% of the site is in open space. Parking for lodging guests is located near the manor house and is screened. The overflow lawn parking area is to be left as a grass field and will need to be screened from adjacent properties. A site plan and building elevations for the proposed building have been provided. So those are all noting things with which the application complies with the required standards for a retreat designation. So staff recommends forwarding a favorable recommendation and suggests that the Board of Appeals may wish to give consideration to the following items: that no more than 15 guest rooms are permitted without prior approval to expand the retreat use. No parking for events is permitted on Cliff Road. No maintenance facilities or equipment is visible from outside the property. A road maintenance agreement for Cliff Road is signed by all property owners and recorded, and that there be limits on hours for outdoor events. Under the site plan review standards, there's also a series of findings of fact that the Planning Commission is to make. I'm going to go to the staff comments for those findings, which is page 5 of the staff report. The application is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Sufficient parking is available for the guest rooms and staff. Should an event be held that requires overflow parking, an area has been designated on the site plan. Landscaping as required for commercial developments in Article 5, Section 11 of the Land Use Ordinance will need to be added to that parking area. A buffer enhancement plan for the additional lot coverage will be required. The applicant is working with the Health Department to determine the adequacy of water and septic area. The change in use should not place additional demands on public services. 2 trees will be removed and mitigation will be required. The proposed building has been designed to complement the historic nature of the site and the surrounding neighborhood, and a citizen participation meeting was held back on June 18th. We did receive correspondence related to this application, and I am going to note, there were 7 letters, and I will note who they were from for the record. We had a letter from Joel Trigiani and Denise Gee. We received a letter from Stephen Newberger. We have a letter from Dennis and Gay Cox, which was also signed by George and Fran Bisak. We have a letter from Kevin and Rebecca Mountain. We have a separate letter from George and Fran Bisak and a letter from Alexa Fry and Miles Barnard, and a letter from Bronwyn Fry. And those letters were all made available to the Planning Commission prior to the meeting and have been posted on the website.
Unless there's any objection from the members, those will be considered to be part of this record.
Thank you, Carl. No other correspondence other than that?
I am not aware of any other correspondence.
Citizens participation report. Do we have that? It said it was out.
I don't remember receiving, we have the letter that was sent to the neighbors. I don't remember receiving a summary, but you can certainly ask the
Right, that's what I was going to
applicant.
say. If we don't, we'll ask. Okay.
Question, Carl, could you confirm that Cliff Road is a private road, not a public road?
Cliff Road is a private road.
Are you aware, are there any existing road maintenance agreements for Cliff Road? If
I
you
am
know?
not aware of any existing agreements.
Is the applicant or any of their representatives here to testify on behalf of that? Please step forward. You can state your names and addresses for the record, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Lance Young. I'm here on behalf of the applicants. With me in the back is Kevin Sharon. He's here to address questions that are related to the concept design and concept plan. And when he's ready to do that, I'll step back and let him come forward. I'm going to speak mostly to the special exception request. Before either me or Kevin do that, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Wharton Bellamy. He's one of the principals of Freedom Properties that owns the property. I'll ask Mr. Bellamy to introduce himself, speak briefly about the company, and what his specific goals for this application request are.
We were going to ask him because we'd like him to raise his right hand.
Okay.
And you might as well too, Kevin, if you're going to, or you could just stand. Is the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And your full name for the record?
Wharton Bellamy.
Thank you, sir. Okay, go ahead.
So good. Mr. Bellamy, if you could just introduce yourself and tell them what the company is that owns Great Oak Manor now, and what are your specific goals for these applications?
Sure. First, thank you for allowing us to present today, and thank you for your consideration of our special exception. Again, my name is Wharton Bellamy, and my wife, Kelly Walker, and I are the owners of Great Oak Manor. We arrived from Tennessee in February of 2022, and we were aware of the history of the prior owner and the neighbors, as well as with prior proposals. So about a week after closing, we met with our neighbors, many of whom are here, for two reasons. One, we wanted to share our vision. And secondly, we wanted to pledge our commitment to being neighborly. We had read the transcripts during our due diligence. We knew what the issues were. And again, we pledged that we would conduct ourselves in a way that they richly deserved. We've been here now 2 years and 7 months. I think we've honored that pledge. I think our neighbors would concur that we have honored that pledge. The best way to understand what we're seeking today is in the context of the underlying project and our business. We're focused on elevating Great Oak Manor to becoming a luxury boutique hotel. I'm joined here by our general manager, Colleen Taralunga. He comes to us from the Inn at Perry Cabin in St. Michael's. He has a staff that includes a chef, a staff of guest services, and others who support us in our business. We're focused in 3 areas. One, we want Great Oak Manor to become a place of connection and reconnection, where our guests can come and connect meaningfully with the people who matter in their lives. The second area of focus for us is what we call powerful shared learning. We believe all of us deserve to continue on our learning journey, and we're going to bring experts to Great Oak Manor across any number of domains. It could be literary, art, music, culinary. And the last area of focus for us is wellness. I think the pandemic taught us all that we have some needs with respect to our well-being, and we're going to curate some experiences in the wellness area. So why a kitchen? Well, in our past experience and current experience, we found that food touches each of our points of focus. We certainly connect through food, we learn through food, and we can experience wellness through food. We've decided to undertake the kitchen project and the yoga studio so that we can create some unique and differentiated experiences for our guests. That's at the core of our business model. So we're excited to be here. We love Chestertown. We love the property. We've invested in 100% renovation of the property. The kitchen constitutes a significant investment. The retreat designation is something that's been requested of us in order to execute on the underlying project. And to do so, we have to make some significant decisions with respect to the adjacent properties that independently have significant fair market value that in combination goes away. So we ask that you consider the special exception. We ask that the conditions not be included in the recommendation. But again, we appreciate you and are delighted to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So go back to the beginning of what he said. So a majority of you members were here a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, when I was here on behalf of the previous owner, Great Oak Manor. And at that time, the last time I was here, we were requesting an expansion of the number of rooms in the form of cottages. This commission gave a favorable recommendation to do that, and we got that approved through the Board of Appeals. That project never came to fruition because shortly after we got that approval, Freedom Properties came in and offered to buy the property, and it was sold, and so that project never happened. I bring all this up because you probably recall at that time that there was some friction between the manor and some of the neighbors. And that's primarily for one reason, is because the thing that's the same between the two entities now is that they're both primarily there for transient lodging. It's a 15-room or 13-room place where people come and stay overnight. A couple years ago, it was primarily also used as a wedding venue. And so because it was used as a wedding venue, they had large groups of people, and there was large receptions that happened in the evening time with loud music, and those things were happening in a way that it was disruptive to the neighborhood that was nearby. Those things no longer happen. It's no longer a wedding venue. When Freedom Properties came in and took over the property, it's a much more respectful thing. It's a much more respectful place. It's quiet. It's low-key. The applications that are before you now are for the specific purpose that they wanted to put in this accessory structure on the property. And the accessory structure is, as he stated, it's a demonstration kitchen. It's not a restaurant. It's not where commercial food is going to be sold to the public, but it's a place where chefs can come in, teach their guests how to cook gourmet meals, and once they do that, then they can, the guests can go in and recreate those meals themselves. That's the concept. And then on the second floor of that, they can have a yoga studio because their customers, there's a demand for that as well. With the designation as a country inn, that kind of accessory structure wasn't allowed. So it was suggested to us by the planning office, well, you can get that kind of accessory structure if you have the retreat designation, which is why we're seeking the retreat designation. But while we're getting the retreat designation, we also want to have the benefits of that. As Mr. Bellamy stated, we're going to be combining 3 parcels together, 2 of which could be independently sold for a lot of money. This is waterfront property that could be sold for a lot of money. And so we don't necessarily want to give up a lot of the rights that we would have with a retreat designation just because we're only getting it right now for the purpose of having that demonstration kitchen. One of the things that this commission has to consider is whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The staff report states that it believes that it is consistent with the plan. I'd like to elaborate briefly on that. It does support small locally owned business, but in addition to that, there's a comprehensive plan goal of supporting existing businesses within the county. So Great Oak Manor has been in the county since 1984. It's been a thriving business since that time, and we believe with this retreat designation it will continue to thrive. It meets the goal of the economy. The type of people that are coming in to visit the Great Oak Manor are different than any other place in the county. We're bringing in corporate guests, business clients. They're bringing in companies who bring their retreats to the manor. And these are people that wouldn't ordinarily come to Kent County. And they're coming to Kent County and they're spending their money at other places. They're seeing what a great place this is and they're bringing their families back to it. And they're helping our local economy in that way. It also meets the comprehensive plan goal of tourism, which states that we want to enhance and expand locally based tourism. It also supports the strategy of developing year-round attractions and events. So this specific goal that we have of putting in this demonstration kitchen, that's a thing that can be done year-round. That's different from other types of things that happen in this county. And then finally, as the county staff report states, it does promote and expand facilities, services, and activities that support natural resource-based economic development. So I want to focus very briefly on special exception law in general. And I want to make the point that special exception law has a presumption that it should be approved. And when I say that, what I mean is that when somebody comes to the county and says, I want a variance, what they're asking for is an exception to the rule. They're saying, the rule is this, but we want to do something other than what the rule is. We want an exception to that. And a special exception works the exact opposite of that. And the way that the Appellate Court of Maryland has described it is, it's a presumption of validity. It's presumed that they should be entitled to all the benefits of that special exception unless there's a really good reason not to for that particular property, because that particular property sits in a place that's not appropriate for that kind of activity. Otherwise, it's presumed that it should be granted. I'm not going to go into details about whether or not we meet all the conditions for being a retreat, because Carla Gerber has gone over that, and we concur with that. The only specific condition in the checklist that this commission needs to go down under 7.49 that we don't currently meet is the 15 acres. And we're meeting that by combining the 3 parcels together and making one parcel so that we can meet that 15-acre acreage. Where we differ from the county staff report is that we are asking that the conditions not be placed. And the reason that we ask that is because we don't think that they are either necessary or relevant. None of the conditions that are proposed are relevant to what we are proposing right now. And none of the conditions that are proposed are relevant to anything that is happening at the property right now. There's no issue with any of these things. There's no issue with parking and those kinds of things. My belief is that these could be things. People are concerned that because a retreat can be allowed to give up to 40 rooms, that we're automatically going to go in and get those 40 rooms. But the fallacy in that is that if we were to ever request to have additional rooms, which we are entitled to do and we should be able to do, we would have to come back before approval before this commission and before the Board of Appeals and get site plan approval for those kinds of things. And it's more appropriate to consider those kinds of things in the context that is being requested and in the climate at the time that it's being requested. So 10 years from now, they or another owner may have a very appropriate request to increase the rooms from 13 to 16 rooms. And they may have a very good plan for doing it. But if you put the condition on there that you can't have any more than 15 rooms, then we can't even make that request 10 years from now. So for those reasons, we ask that you not put those kinds of conditions on there. It's our belief that if to do so, that the Great Oak Manor would be treated differently than other similarly situated properties in Kent County who are given this kind of retreat designation without the conditions. So with that, unless you have any questions for me, I will step back and I will allow Kevin Sheeran to talk to you about the concept plan. Okay, thank you. You can stay there. Sorry.
Good afternoon. Kevin Sheeran, DMS and Associates. We are at concept plan, so there's not a whole lot of details to dive into, but essentially, since as part of the retreat request, we will be forced to combine all the properties. It will be over 15 acres. The majority of it is in the critical area. After the kitchen is constructed and the improvements associated with it, we will be at about 8.5% impervious cover. 15% is the limitation. We are working with the health department on the sewer and water, septic and well. We will be exploring stormwater management options and developing landscape plans as we move forward. The building was sited kind of off to the right of the manor as you face the manor, so that it's understated but takes advantage of the beautiful views out over the bay, and is accessible to the manor house itself. So with that, I'll answer any questions about the site plan. Joanne Gabeline is here with Torchio Architects if there are any questions about the structure itself.
You did the citizens participation report?
We did the citizens
Is there any-
participation meeting at the manor. I would have to go back and look through my file. I thought we had written a report on the comments that we got. In general, the comments were regarding traffic as one. The biggest thing I took away from it was not so much what was being proposed now, but what might happen in the future. And we have no future plans. That would be dealt with at a later date, obviously. But if a report was not written, we will certainly put one together and provide that to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicants from the commission here?
Kevin, do you know offhand how many people attended the citizens participation meeting?
I believe it was about 12 to 15.
Okay. And offhand, do you know the number of residences on Cliff Road?
I do not.
Okay. I do. I believe it's 14.
Houses. Yeah, that sounds about right.
For staff on the Country Inn, that doesn't allow for an accessory structure for a demonstration kitchen. I'm curious about the need.
It has to do more with how they would be used. The Country Inn is pretty specific as to sort of expansion and enlargement of principal and accessory structures. And all of the conversations that I've had with the applicant was that the demonstration kitchen and yoga studio were not so much amenities available to guests, but were part of the bringing people in or being able to have events that were not related to somebody staying there. So, you could have a day-long special event with the bringing in a chef or something, or they've had a chef there for a retreat and he stays on for an extra day for like a community event. And so we felt that the retreat designation gave them more flexibility on how they could use these accessory structures and the types of events and programming that they could do that were sort of beyond the scope of a Country Inn, which is pretty specific to transient lodging.
I have a question for you, Carla. One of the proposed conditions that the applicant is asking that be removed, no more than 15 guest rooms are permitted without prior approval to expand the retreat use. So with the retreat, you could get up to 40. What would be the difference in process for the applicant to go to a higher number of rooms if that restriction was not there compared to the restriction being there?
If that condition is not there, then they would simply need to come to the Planning Commission for site plan approval. And at that point, the presumption is that the number of rooms is permitted, and so there wouldn't be the same ability to kind of go into sort of those standards that are used for evaluating special exceptions and the appropriateness to the location and the neighborhood.
So if it was limited to 15 rooms now, to go to a number above 15, the applicant, if this condition were there, the applicant would need to go back before the Board of Appeals
Correct.
and then put in an application and a justification for going above 15 rooms.
Correct. The idea is to sort of allow a additional level of review that might not be there without a condition on the number of rooms.
So they would need to show that the criteria is met for special exception.
Correct.
At that level.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carla, what was the basis for, or how did you derive the 5 conditions? What were those 5 conditions based on?
They were based on previous reviews of this property and things that seemed to be of concern to the neighborhood. They were presented as, they are being suggested as things that could be sort of easily adhered to by the current applicant, that could also give some assurance to the surrounding area that there won't be significant changes to the use of the property.
Can I make an observation? It seems to me that these 5 conditions were stipulated in the 7 letters that you received.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Based on this stipulation and everything, you're talking about the previous owner that we had problems with for three or 4 different meetings. The previous owner, he wouldn't listen. He didn't care about the county. He didn't care about his neighbors. And he didn't care about us up here or the county commission. He done what he wanted to do. It was about money. This man is sitting here, from what I heard him say, and his representative here, that he's reaching out for the county. He's doing everything for the county that's going to benefit something in the county. It could be young people that want to be a chef. This, you putting in a kitchen, right?
Yes,
And a yoga class, and a yoga.
yes.
All right, that other man didn't want nothing. All he wanted to do, he didn't have to listen to the neighbors. He didn't have to listen to us. He done it, he came in here on a Thursday. And we definitely told him what he had to do. No buses, no big events, no tents, no live music. He didn't listen to us. I went down that Saturday during the day after that to meet with Miss Pickle. That man had buses and everything. Music blasting. He didn't listen to us. All he thought about was his thing, his money. This man is thinking about something that'll help the county. And we get the neighbors here, you know what they should be doing? Thanking him. Not complaining. They should thank him for getting that man out of there. I was so frustrated with that man because I believe that the county itself and the neighbors, he didn't think about neighbors, the neighbors and all of them should he should have respected them. He didn't have a meeting with them. He sat up there and done what he wanted to do. This man had a meeting with the neighbors, from what I read. He's telling them, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. This is a kitchen that will help some young kids in this county to benefit. It's not going to disturb neighbors by having the kitchen in there. Let me ask you something. The neighbors, you by two football fields away from the manor. The closest neighbor to you is who?
Vita Pickram.
Vita Pickram. She's about 100 yards away from you. I rode down there and seen. And the neighbors, where you at, it says before you pull in, it's a drive slow. Children are playing. You can't even see the manor. It's a piece of, it's woods across there. And you want to put a kitchen in and a yoga thing in to benefit the kids or anybody in the county to do something. These kids in the county doesn't have the offer to do anything. If they don't go to college, they looking for a trade, this man could give them a trade. You have to think about a program that I'm thankful for. That I'm gonna tell you this, the Lions Club, Chestertown Lions Club, I belong to it. We reached out for, over the period of 3 years, we reached out for 3 students. Every one of them, in the 3 years, they became what they worked for plumber, electrician, went to college. Out of them 3 years, there was 9 kids. Only one we lost one. And people sit around here, don't think about young people in this county. They think about themselves. I'm at the point where I say, think about the young kids. This is what this man's offering. Something there that's beautiful. That's all we got to do is say, you've been here for 2 years.
2 years and 7 months.
What big events you had down there?
We haven't had any big events.
You had no big events?
No,
So it ain't been no buses down in there?
no.
Okay. Through the neighbor, from what I see, you gotta, when you come into that manor, only thing that I see where it's close to that manor is it's a white house before you get in there on the left. What neighbor owned that house?
He owns that house.
Huh?
That house is part of the Great Oak Manor property.
Oh, good gracious. There's no more neighbors around there that close.
I think if you read all of those letters, you'll see that the neighbors support the idea of the demonstration kitchen and the yoga studio. They're not opposed to Mr. Bellamy's operation. They are more concerned that what happens if there aren't limits kind of within the special exception approval, and the retreat designation is much broader than a country inn designation. And so they are looking to make sure that while a small retreat is appropriate in this location, maybe a larger retreat is not, and that there should be a way to make sure that if they want to expand within that retreat designation, that there are appropriate measures to make sure that it's viewed and approved with consideration to the entire neighborhood.
If it was a larger retreat than what it is now, don't you think Mr. Bell would go back and meet with the neighbors like he did the first time to explain that?
I can't answer to that because that's not the question today.
But what they're looking at from what I see here on this paper, what they looking at, they're judging from that other owner. Everything is listed down here is what we told that other owner he couldn't do.
And I would point out that the list that's here were items that you and the Board of Appeals could give consideration to. If you don't like them, then they don't have to be part of your recommendation.
Right, the ordinance specifically says that conditions can be put on, and comment about the road, as I recall from past times when owners of this property have come before various county agencies, the road has been an issue because it's a private road and there's been concern about increased traffic on it. And private roads can be very problematic, especially if you have one user that has a more intense use of the road than others, and apportioning who pays for what. So it's up to ultimately the Board of Appeals as to whether or not they want to impose these conditions for the special exception. But to me, the road issue is something that is problematic, and if there's no agreement in place, at some point in time, something's going to have to be done.
That's for us to deliberate.
Okay.
That's what, we have those questions too.
Sure.
I mean, you're out from council, but
Sure.
I mean, I think that was, in my world, that's a big thing, because for
Right.
two reasons. I agree, it's agreement for all parties signed. They're going to agree to something. It could be substantial cost for somebody.
Well, nevertheless, we ought to put this in context. The Great Oak Manor has been in operation since 1938. It was actually built from the ballast bricks of ships that came up the Chesapeake. It's been owned by 5 different owners since 2002. Not all of them have been particularly accommodative of the neighbors, but the fact is that the road that leads to Great Oak Manor was put in by Great Oak Manor. So all of the people on Cliff Road have had the benefit for the duration of their ownership of their property, which, as far as I can tell from the record, started in 1984 and proceeded to 23, have had the benefit of the road that was originally put in and maintained by Great Oak Manor. So it seems to me that the 14 residences on Cliff Road, of which 7 have filed a complaint, of which 3 are full-time residents and the rest are part-time residents, ought to go in favor of Great Oak Manor. And if anyone should be responsible for the road that goes beyond Great Oak Manor, it should be the residents. And the manor and the residents might come to some accommodation on the road leading past the manor. I don't know what the right formula is, but preemptive foreclosure, the whole list I find objectionable, because preemptive foreclosure of this organization's right to come before this body with any changes it proposes, and to be subject to rules that don't apply to the residents, i.e. parking on Cliff Road, i.e. late-night parties, it goes beyond the bound of what's fair and reasonable.
It's
In
different.
my
They're
opinion.
requesting a retreat. The owners have private residences. They're making a request. They have a use that's allowed, which they've apparently been doing very well. They want to intensify it. That's the question.
I know, and
And
it's
7 people didn't oppose it. They had questions about the scope of it. That's what I read in this.
well, they came up with the 5 preconditions.
Well, what's wrong with that? I mean, that's allowed. I mean, those could be other conditions too. We could put more. We're a deliberative board. We could put 2
I
in or 10
understand
in.
that. Well, I agree with James and Mr. Bellamy that First of all, I don't know how many of you have been out there, and it's true that the adjacent property owner has not one whit of a problem with this proposal. But they have done an amazing job with this property, an elegant retreat, a place for a retreat that's private and screened, and will be a benefit to this county. And I'm speaking in terms of our interests in tourism, our interest in having a high-class place for people to come and stay, and for attracting a clientele that this county would do well to promote.
I believe we still haven't heard from the public, and I think before we make a decision, we ought to listen to the neighbors'
Well,
concerns.
they deserve their day in court, yes.
That's the process, yes, it is. You go ahead, Bill.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out that as applicant's counsel has noted, special exceptions are presumed appropriate for the district with a series of tests, generally based on location. Is there something, a more serious impact on this location versus other locations?
Right.
I believe that the existence of this neighborhood as directly adjacent to the property these are a series of appropriate conditions because the neighborhood is a locational issue, and I think that ties in with what special exceptions are all about.
Right, and these are things you need to consider. Maybe in other words is, there's always going to be an impact on the neighborhood in the zoning district with this use, no matter where you put it. So the question is the impact or a negative impact at this location greater than whatever negative impacts there would be with this use inherently, regardless of wherever it's placed or located within the zoning district? And are there things that you could do to mitigate that to allow approval? Because I do agree with what Mr. Young said, it was a correct statement of the law. And I think what staff is doing is looking at that law and making recommendations in it. But it's up, again, it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to go with those recommendations or not after careful consideration.
We understand. I think the question is, we've heard testimony of how wonderful job it is. I've been out there. It is. But I think when you make a request to change, that's what we have, that's our job here. It's not to say what they've done isn't great and what they could be doing is going to be greater. We just have to make sure we respect all the neighbors. That's all.
You have to hear from everybody before you
And
make
we
a
haven't
decision.
heard from everybody yet. That's, I think they deserve to testify. Is there anything else you guys like to say? Can someone please do that?
I would just like
Go ahead. Thank you, sir.
to say, we're members of the community too. And at the core of our business model is creating a peaceable environment for our guests. That's the experience that we're selling. We have no interest in noise, current or future. The only noise that I'm aware of presently comes from the marina. It predated us. You can go there every weekend. There are bands playing into the night. And if there needs to be a focus on disruption of the harmony of the community, that's the only current known source. As for us, the conditions are problematic, one, because they don't relate to anything that we're proposing today. And two, they reflect concerns that are best addressed in the context of a future proposal, be it with respect to rooms or anything else. To do otherwise feels preemptive and leaves us treated unlike any other property like ours with the retreat designation. The bottom line for us is to accept the conditions means we have the designation minus the core rights under that designation. We've got to qualify for that designation, as you know. Practically what that means for us is we've got to take our White House property that has its own fair market value, it has a home. We've got to take 4 acres of waterfront that has its own fair market value, combine it into one parcel, lose all that fair market value, and in the process with these conditions, lose the benefit of the designation. And that's ultimately what's troubling, not the fact that neighbors deserve a neighborly environment. We totally agree with that and are trying to comport with that. This is just about the relevance of these conditions to what we're proposing and the timing. And the timing is most appropriate when we actually are proposing something to which these conditions relate. That's our only concern.
Thank you, sir. I have a list of attendees here, and some have checked to speak if they would like to. I have first Miles Bernard. You want to raise your right hand? Is the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is.
Name and address for the record.
My name is Miles Barnard, and I live at 10810 Cliff Road, Chestertown.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm not as calm as I was when I first walked in the room. I first want to say, based on the mischaracterization from Mrs. Reeder and Mr. Saunders about why we as neighbors are here. I certainly don't speak for every neighbor, but I think, and other people will come up and speak. But I will say that we like the proposal. We think a yoga studio and a demonstration kitchen is great. I have no issue with that. Most of us have no issue with that, and it fits in with what Wharton has been doing and what he wants to do, and he's been a great neighbor. And yes, he had us down and presented the plans, and so did Buddy Reed have us down and present his plans. And Buddy Reed worked with us up to the end to try to come up with an agreement to get his approval, which ultimately didn't happen because Wharton bought the property. But I think to bring up Buddy Reed is so ridiculous in this context. And we are not here based on anything that happened before. We're here because this is our neighborhood, and we're concerned about our neighborhood. We're concerned about our future generations who will live in the properties that we live in. And the concern is not with what Wharton is doing. We're like I said, we're happy with everything that he's done. He's done a wonderful job. They've invested a tremendous amount of money in that property so far to make it what it deserves to be. And I think I generally speak for everybody to say we like having it in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful asset to have in the county and in our neighborhood. But the retreat designation, Joe, you brought it up earlier, kind of questioning, is the retreat designation the only way? Is it necessary to do what he wants to do? And in my understanding, and anybody from staff can correct me, the only reason that they are asking for a retreat designation is because of language in the code that says that people cannot come for day use. They cannot come to take a yoga class and then leave because they're not staying there. They're not sleeping in the inn, renting a room. That seems so obtuse. It just seems like such a blunt instrument to have to use in order to allow them to do that. I mean, in discussions when we were down with Wharton, those of us in the neighborhood, we're like, well, you're allowed to do weddings. I mean, those people aren't staying at the inn. Why is that different? And obviously there are nuances there that allow that to happen. But generally, our issue is not with the proposal. So I just want to make that clear. We are not opposing the yoga studio and the demonstration kitchen. We are not opposing anything that Great Oak Manor is doing down there. I am, as a neighbor, am happy with it. We have no issues. The issue is what happens when the property sells and it's now a retreat and they can build up to 40 rooms. And yes, you can say that there are limitations on septic. There are ways, other properties could be purchased to serve as septic reserve areas, or there could be new technologies available that allow more rooms than what might be allowed currently under, what what the property can support in terms of a septic system. But it's a neighborhood. I mean, yes, maybe some of us are 100 yards away, maybe some of us are, a quarter mile away, but we're all impacted, whether it's noise, which we have not had any issues with, whether it's traffic, whether it's people staying there who, drive out or walk out or just whatever it is. It's a facility in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And the proposal is I shouldn't say that. The proposal is not to expand it. They're asking for retreat designation, which allows it to be expanded. And I don't think that Wharton has intentions to do that, but somebody else could. And so the question is one, is this the only way? Am I right that the only reason that they're requesting the retreat designation is really just so people can come and have a day and use this new building on a day use basis? That's it. And then what happens when the next guy comes along and they really want to blow it up into something bigger? So that's all my testimony. Thank you very much.
Hannah Hinn?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to
Great.
speak.
You raise your right hand. Is the
Yes.
testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And name and address.
My name is Hannah Henn. Address is 10631 Cliff Road. I would second what Miles just stated about, is this the only solution to allow the current owners to meet their goals? Hearing the comments, I wanted to share, first, just a correction for the record, is that the road was in place before Great Oak Manor was there, is our understanding. Our house on Cliff Road, actually, if you look at the plats and original documents, it's called Barnhart Boulevard. Originally, there was a public landing down that road, and the house that I grew up in, we have photos of it in the 1920s. I don't know when it was constructed exactly, but there was a farm down Barnhart Boulevard, which is now called Cliff Road, but that was a public access over 100 years ago. I come to you with a perspective not only as a neighbor, but as somebody who has worked professionally for an economic development corporation, also as an appointed public official in the world of transportation. So regarding the conversation about recommended restrictions, I'm in agreement with the discussion today about whether or not, my concern is that restrictions today, although well-intentioned, can be harmful in the future. So I actually don't agree or support the proposed staff conditions. What I do support are thinking about what are the goals of those conditions. So if I were to set the conditions aside and just think, what are the overarching concerns of the neighbors? Two things come to mind: noise and traffic. That's really what it comes down to. As I will echo that I'm so glad that the current owners are there. I'm really excited to have Black and women-owned businesses in Kent County, and I want more of those businesses, and I want them to thrive. The concern I see is allowing all property owners in the county to have the highest and best use of their property. So while I don't wish to devalue the potential for the manor house, the Great Oak Manor's property, I also don't wish the potential of devaluing the property, our properties as neighbors. In addition to having been born and raised on Cliff Road, personally, I also own a home here in town. It was built in the 1750s, and I always say that I don't consider myself an owner, I consider myself a steward of that home. That property and house was there before I was here, it will be here after I am here. And so, in my mind, I also consider Great Oak Manor, the current business, to be a steward of the property. And they won't be the owners forever. So while they may be wonderful people and doing great things, which I don't think you've heard anything to the contrary, we don't know who the next stewards will be. And so I ask you to consider conditions that address noise and traffic concerns. I also, as a former public official who reviewed zoning plans and traffic management plans, when something is proposed that is zoned as an as-of-right development, it's very hard to make any changes to that. So once this property is zoned as a retreat without any conditions, it would be very hard for future government representatives to reduce their rights and place restrictions. So moving forward without any restrictions is a concern. My recommendations would be to make them as simple as possible so that you don't create future harm. An example of that is the recent issue in town of the fact that there was a minimum zoning restriction, but no maximum. And somebody came in and wanted to build a very large private dwelling. So the minimum was put in good faith. There was no maximum. So it's very hard for us to anticipate what future challenges may be. So the more specific the conditions are, the more challenging it is. Like this accessory dwelling, for example, a day use is a restriction that somebody put in at some point in time, which they thought, as a part of the zoning, that they thought would be helpful. And now that day use specificity is making it challenging for this existing business to operate. So again, I would urge you to think about the future, to think about this property 50 years from now. I really hope that it continues to thrive and that it is bringing in economic potential to the county. And I hope that the two overarching issues that I see as traffic concerns and noise can be addressed. Personally, I don't care if there are 500 people there, if they come in 5 buses and stay for a week and then all leave in 5 buses. It's the coming and going, it's the traffic management, not the number of people, not the number of people staying there. So my recommendation would be, if legally possible, a traffic management plan must be reviewed by public officials for any future changes. Because also the existing condition of an agreement between the owners and the residents, who's going to be the owner tomorrow? They don't necessarily have to abide by the agreement. I just think it's an inefficient way to solve the traffic problem. And the noise, again, if they're having a silent disco and everyone has on headphones and they're all dancing outside and there's no noise, no issue. I don't care what time that happens. It's just, if there's a lot of traffic and if there's noise, it is going to reduce the highest and best use of our properties. When I'm not in the house on Cliff Road, I operate it as an Airbnb. And on my listings, I actually just thought today I should take it down. When I started them, the previous owner was there, and I have a big caveat. There may be noise. You may be disturbed. You may hear loud music playing while you're staying here. Fortunately, that has never been an issue with the current owners. But if that happens in the future, if we're not protected from noise and traffic, it does reduce our property value as well. So, thank you very much.
Very much. Bronwyn Fry.
Good afternoon.
Is this testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And name and address, please.
Bronwyn Fry, 10650 Cliff Road, Chestertown.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Everyone has said exactly what I would have in my notes. My two concerns are of the next owners and what this zoning, retreat zoning would allow them to do, not the intentions of this owner, because it's permanent. And why isn't there a middle road? Why can't there be what they have plus allowance for the one building they're asking for at this time? It seems like overkill to give them, to go to the retreat status. And as far as their concern for having to combine their properties and take away value, in my opinion, selling a retreat has far more value than what they have now to the next owner, because they will be able to develop it as they wish, because they already have the retreat. They will be selling it as a retreat, not a country inn, and I don't understand that the past owners buy a country inn knowing what it is, and within 2 years have wanted to change it and don't seem to understand what they purchased and why does it need to get bigger. And the final thing is, I don't oppose this building. I oppose what the building incurs for our future. And the road issue, when it comes to paving this road, I don't know if you understand that we all have to pay for the road. And in the past, owners of the Manor House, some have paid for the entire portion from the golf course to the entrance of the manor, which to me is appropriate because they're operating a business there. But since there's no agreement, we are constantly faced with discussions on how to support the road because it comes out of our pocket. And very few of the owners of the manor have ever addressed the fact that they're operating a business, and that should be part of this in their contribution to the road. And before, it was a private home, the manor. It was not a business. I moved there in 1979, and it was still a private home owned by the Othesons. It's not always.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Joanne Giebelin?
Yes, hi. I was here to talk about the
Okay.
building, but there doesn't seem to be any issues with that, so.
Okay, yeah.
I'll wait my right.
If we have questions in our deliberation about that part, we'll certainly probably call on you. Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak that's on the stream or that didn't sign up? Okay. It's back up here. And I guess my first question is, you know who's coming to, Carl and Bill, is if they, in their current use, the current use they have now, if the day use wasn't in there, could they build that building without combining parcels?
Well, Carlos finding a definition, by the way, is always on the record. Staff works very, very hard to attempt to help people to start businesses, understand businesses in Kent County. Our code, as with all zoning codes, is a long historical document. And specific uses were added at specific times for specific projects. And that creates limitations. And we do try to always, when possible, fit proposals into existing sets of uses, but sometimes that just is not possible. We often recommend a zoning text amendment as a way of addressing that, and you see many of those
and sometimes there's a ladder effect. In this case, country and rural and retreat, it's sort of a ladder of progress. So that's another option in this kind of use, is you can just move up the scale and ask for the next step.
Okay, so I'm going to read the definition of a country inn, which is an existing building where for compensation and only by prearrangement for definite periods, lodging and meals are provided. Such uses are limited to 15 rooming units excluding resident manager quarters. So as I stated earlier, the country inn really is a use that's intended to be for transient lodging, as opposed to the definition of a retreat, which is a small meeting facility in a private natural area free from distractions, thus allowing meeting participants to focus on the goals and objectives of the meeting. And based on the conversations that I had, and I had more than one conversation with the owner and with his general manager at that time, the retreat designation seemed to fit their business model best, which was to encourage those corporate retreats. They've used that word in their presentation today and their discussions with staff, that they do corporate retreats. And so trust me, we looked through this. We wish we had found a better option between something that is limited to a very small scale versus the retreat, which can go up to a much larger scale, but really felt that with the information we had, we were making the best interpretation.
And now, Danny, I just don't, where in the definition is the 1 day? I missed the nuance there, or that in a country inn that it.
That the country inn is that it's a building where for compensation and prearrangement, lodging and meals are provided. So it's that lodging, the intent is that it's providing overnight accommodations.
There's no limit on the number of people allowed, though?
Well, I mean, it's limited to
40 rooms, isn't it?
15 rooming units.
Oh, a country inn's 15, yeah.
Country Inn is allowed to have, in the critical area residential district, you can have a dining facility that is limited to a maximum seating capacity of 40 persons, and that the dining facility may be provided to patrons other than boarders, which.
We're getting close.
I was going to say you were getting off.
So.
And I guess for the applicant's benefit, if they know what they want and they could build this building, assume we like the drawings, look beautiful to my mind, and I haven't heard any testimony otherwise. But if they could accomplish this more simply, they don't have to combine parcel, they do have flexibility. I mean, for the future, I mean, maybe it harms the neighbors. I mean, this could tidy it up, but in a sense, the applicant has a lot more freedom if all they have to do is look for a site plan and not a change in a special exception. I mean, I think we may be doing a disservice if we could interpret that as a one-day use. I don't know who the we is now, Carla.
I would defer to Tom, but I believe that interpretation of whether or not this needs to be a retreat is maybe relevant to the Board of Appeals discussion.
I guess the question is there a way that they could build the building with the kitchen and the yoga studio without having to go from being a country inn to being a retreat, getting the special exception to be a retreat? Is there any provision under the zoning ordinance for critical area residential where, as a permitted use, this structure could be built? I think that's the question.
Right, without having to combine parcels. You
Right.
don't have to get to the 15 acres.
Right, because the retreat requires 15 acres.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
That, you know,
Yeah.
is it simpler to confine, or to make a deliberation on the definition as opposed to going through this process and still allow the flexibility of the owner and the use they want?
The thing is, I'm looking at permitted principal uses and structures under critical area residential, trying to see if there's anything that would fit. It's not agriculture,
I am not aware
not
of
a
any
camp.
other permitted use that would fit my understanding of how they wish to use this new facility.
You need a text amendment to get there.
Correct.
So that, I think that's the other option.
Correct.
Is a
Correct.
text amendment to allow this type of use without the need for a special exception, or to change the classification to retreat.
Revise the provisions of the special exception in the definition.
Meals and lodging.
Sorry?
Meals, you're allowed to have visitors for
Right.
2 hours to have a meal.
So basically, it's a lodging accommodation that can have a small restaurant, but it's a specific limitation.
Which is used
That's
to the
the-
public, to the non-residents.
Right. That's really, I mean, Carla, correct
I
me if
guess
I'm
I'm
wrong.
really
In the
confused.
latter, this is sort of a really big bed and breakfast, as opposed to a corporate retreat center. I mean, that's a sort of different area. You know, I don't think it would even have the same industrial classification number, right? One's primarily residential, and one is sort of a commercial retreat.
But if they can get the use they have now, basically with, add on with, you know, an accessory structure that allows further uses, I don't, it seems like they would benefit from that.
That they wouldn't need a special exception.
They wouldn't need anything.
Right. But
Well,
that
you've
would
got-
require a text amendment, it
That would-
appears.
In my opinion, that would require a
that's what it
text
seems to
amendment,
me.
and as I understand it, interpretation of the zoning code is vested in the department, so.
And if somebody disagrees with that, then they would get an appeal to the
They
Board
would
of
appeal to
Appeals.
the Board of Appeals. You know, to sort of, you know, aid negotiation, I guess, if the applicant is willing to limit themselves to 40 guests to match the 40 seats in the dining room, which I don't believe they are, but perhaps they are, if they're willing to limit themselves to 40 guests, and this board makes a recommendation to the Board of Appeals that they believe that that would qualify as a dining room, I won't oppose it, even though I'm supposed to be the interpretive authority. I just, you know, and if they want to amend their application and make it an application for a revision to their existing country inn special exception, I mean, I think council can review that kind of action, but I mean, I could see that as applicant makes a proffer, this board makes a recommendation, and the Board of Appeals sorts it out? Is that
But
appropriate?
it seems to me that the dilemma is, they want to do a very limited, right now, limited expansion of what they have. But the current zoning with them as a country inn doesn't allow that.
That's how we've interpreted the code, yes,
A
sir.
retreat is allowed, but a retreat gives you a whole bunch of things that they're not proposing right
Much
now,
larger.
and that seems to be a concern of the neighbors. Staff attempted to address that by putting in restrictions, but the applicant has said that they would like to see the restrictions removed, or they don't want to have the restrictions.
Right, because I would imagine that, right, this
If they
does
wanna
run with, this does run with the land, and it will affect property values, so this would be acquiring entitlements for future value.
Right, the only comment that I would have to this would be, in touching on what Carla said, is you put the restrictions in there, that doesn't mean you can't do those things in the future. It simply means, for depending on what you do, that you would have to go back to the Board of Appeals for another application. So if they want to have
Correct.
more rooms, we're not saying in perpetuity they are limited to 15 rooms. What we're saying is, they can, as a matter of right now that they're a retreat, go submit a site plan for 40 rooms or any number greater than 15. They would have to go back before the Board of Appeals, and then you would go back before you, because you would make a recommendation to the Board of Appeals, and then the Board of Appeals would need to give the approval for the additional rooms.
Thank you, Tom, yes.
Can I say something? If they want to retreat, right? To build, and that's giving them the opportunity to build a kitchen, right?
That is an accessory use that they are proposing.
All right, they have, correct me if I'm wrong, they had what, 15 rooms? now?
13.
13 rooms. They're not talking about building no more rooms, correct?
That's correct.
They're only talking about building a kitchen and a
Yoga studio, yes.
yoga studio. If they wanted to build 20 rooms, they got to come back to us, right?
Yes.
We have to approve.
Well, the Board of Appeals would have to.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no
Depending on how
condition-
it's done.
If there's conditions on there, the approval process has more scrutiny because they'd have to go to the Board of Appeals and get a special exception. If that condition isn't there, they would just submit a site plan.
Correct.
And that's much less scrutiny. And assuming that they follow all the requirements that we have, they're pretty much, it's likely that they're going to get approval. There's more uncertainties involved because there's more criteria if it went to the Board of Appeals as a special exception.
And the opportunity to place other limitations.
Right.
Well,
But in the-
gentlemen,
Go ahead.
the 40-person limit is problematic for a couple of reasons. I mean, if what Bill said is true, that you're limited to 40 people on your campus, retreat centers operate multiple programs at the same time. So let's say they had a yoga class going and they had a chef training class going. It's conceivable that on that day, there could be more than 40 people coming. What you're talking about would limit them to a 40-head max. Is that correct, Bill?
Well, I'm
If
trying
it's-
to craft a proposal to keep it within the current use.
Yes, if it were
If it
in the
was a
current
country
use.
inn.
Correct.
So why would you put that kind of limitation on these people? You know, we just had someone stand up and say that they do B&Bs when they're not in their house. What limits do they put on the short-term rentals for noise, for number of people, all those things? How many people who are residents actually do B&B type arrangements if they're not in their home? I'd be curious to know that. You know, we're talking about splitting hairs here, and you got to be careful what you wish for, because a retreat is a fundamentally different operation than a B&B, fundamentally. And I think Mr. Bellamy is asking for the flexibility to operate as a retreat, not as a fancy B&B. And we ought to give his request due consideration. He's been a good neighbor. He's not asking for any expansion of rooms or beds. He'd have to go through an approval process, which, contrary to, I think, what you were implying, Tom, because in my experience here, the same level of scrutiny outside, you know, providing for public input and public comment and consideration of public comment that any other proposal would get that has to go before the appeals board.
But the criteria is different because if the condition was put on limiting it, they would have to go through the special exception process, which is a different process than just submitting a site plan and getting approval from the planning commission. So it adds another level to it. But you are correct in that there would be some review if they expanded, regardless of whether or not we put a 15-room limitation on it. But the level of that review would be different depending on whether or not there's a condition or not.
But why subject this particular individual to those criteria when we don't even, in this county, we don't even provide similar kinds of limits on people who operate short-term rentals?
I'm not telling you you should or you shouldn't. I'm just pointing out the ramifications of going one way as opposed to the ramifications of going another way. That's all I'm bringing to your attention. I'm not advocating for either position.
Can I ask you a question?
I guess ask it to the mic, Miles?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
What- It makes it to YouTube that way. Yes, thank you.
I was just wondering if maybe it would be appropriate to ask Mr. Bellamy if he's even interested in not requesting the retreat designation in order to his project. Maybe he wants that anyway, in which case this whole conversation is.
So that was the
kind of
heart of mine.
pointless.
If he could do, we could just review a concept plan, or staff could have reviewed the concept plan, and he could start building, and apply for a retreat at any point in time. Go ahead, is that Bill? Our Bill? Or someone else?
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're echoing now.
There's something
Hold
going
on.
on in the background.
Is he using a phone and his computer? That's the question.
Yes.
Can't use phone and computer, Bill. Come on, get right, fella.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, perfect.
Now.
We can hear you.
No, we can't.
Now we can't cut something off.
Bill, you need to add IT people for every board member here, 24/7.
I'll work on that, sir.
Tell the commissioners you need an IT staff for your commission.
I'd like to follow up on Miles's question, if Mr. Bellamy would like
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
Like to
thank-
say, I
thank
mean,
you.
are we going down a road that this is not really what you're looking for, or are we? I mean,
Well, we don't want
this
to
is
put
your
words in their
request,
mouth.
So fundamentally, we want to be treated fairly. We're not interested in preemptive conditions. We want to be treated, if it's the retreat designation, and we have to meet the criteria, that's what's not being discussed. You have to meet a criteria to be a retreat,
combine the
right?
properties,
That's a
all those
real thing.
things.
If we're to do that, we want to enjoy the full bundle of benefits on which the designation is predicated. There's a reason why you have to have 15 acres, right? There's a reason why you need a 100-foot set-off. There's a reason why you have to have 60% open space, okay? There's a reason for that. If we are going to do what we need to do to meet all of those requirements, then we should enjoy the full benefit of the designation. That's where, and what the conditions are tantamount to is giving us the designation in name only, but adding an additional layer of conditions that no one else with a retreat designation has to deal with. And so it's unclear to us as a matter of fairness why we, having met the criteria, would be subject to an additional layer of review that no one else is subject to. That's not been made clear to me, other than a preemptive concern for a future owner that doesn't exist. Well, we are the future owner relative to the last owner. And so why are we assuming that the future owner, if there is one, won't be like us? We're right now, just to my mind, this feels like we're talking about things that are legitimate concerns, but they're legitimate concerns in the context of a real future proposal, not as a preemptive protection in this instance. Now, to your core question, we want to build a kitchen, okay?
So
We want to build a kitchen.
maintaining the current.
We want to build a
And
kitchen.
being able to do that, would that satisfy you? Would that?
I can only deal with what we know today.
Well, the question,
Okay.
I think the question is, if the zoning ordinance was amended to allow the kitchen and the yoga studio in property that's designated as a country inn.
You wouldn't have to combine your properties.
Right. Is
That was
an-
our initial request.
Is that an
but we-
option for you?
That was our initial request. We were told that that wasn't possible. And that's why we're down this particular path. But now that we're down the path, you understand my position.
Sure.
That if we're going to go down
I
that path, then
fully
we
understand.
can't, the hedge can't be, the fix can't be at our expense.
We understand. I was
yeah.
trying to move the process along for
Yeah.
you. If you run a business, then what I've seen has been very
Yeah.
successful, and so that if you could get a studio built, you have a plan and to move it on, and then you always can come back and combine if that room issue.
So that's one point I would make. The other point is, some of the conditions have nothing to do with, not that they're not important, that we talk about who pays for the road, but it has nothing to do with what we're proposing today. And so to introduce as a condition things that are probably more appropriately discussed outside of the context of this proceeding or our request, that's the reason why also some of these conditions just don't fit the facts. Not that they're not legitimate concerns, it's just by attaching them to what we're trying to achieve here, again, feels unfair.
Mr. Bellamy, what is your preferred time frame for moving forward with your construction?
Ideally, we'd like to get the ground cleared before winter. That was our goal, so that we could start construction in 2025. So we're in an important window. This has, been delayed a little bit.
Okay, and text amendments normally take how long to get through the process?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
There's the answer.
I mean, this goes to our core business. I mean, I don't know how to say it other than, we've made a 7-figure investment in the manor in the last 2 years. The kitchen project itself is a very significant financial investment that goes to our core business, okay? Because what we have learned is unless you get into a high-volume wedding business, you have to have something compelling to motivate guests. And we're betting on the kitchen project. The timing is important. For us to be delayed 6 months, 8 months, 12 months has significant implications for us as a business.
Briefly, go ahead.
Do I need to come to the microphone?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Just quick follow-up. I just wanted to share that I think it's important to be very aware that once something is as of right, it is as of right. And, my neighbors in town just put in a new fence and driveway, and I really don't like it, but I told them, if you're proposing things that are allowed within the zoning, I'm not, it's within your rights, and it is what it is. And so I think it's really important to keep in mind that once the rights are bestowed, it is very hard to restrict those rights, nor do I want them restricted. I truly, if I want I'm happy to have a thriving retreat. In response to what Mr. Bellamy has stated, the concern that they want to be treated the same as everyone else, I do just want to point out that this is different than other locations. It's not the same because it is on this private road. So we don't have public protections. We don't have traffic management. We don't have maintenance of the road. And so because we don't receive those public protections and government involvement, it is different. It is not the same as everyone else because we are not on a public road. And so I think the goal is to have some protections for the neighbors who otherwise are not offered any protections living on that road. I mean, making it a public road, I wish we could just do that. And also regarding my guests, I hold them to county towns noise ordinance standards. So they have to sign that they will have quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I do the same. And so, it is important to me as a part of the community to protect the community around me. And I do require that of any of my guests. But once it is as of right, it is as of right. And this is different because of the private road.
Thank you. And first, Mr. Belli, I don't want to, I want to end the back and forth, but if you have anything you'd like to address, because you are the applicant and we want to respect
You had a
it.
question, I'm sorry.
No, I want you to say, if you had any more to say, I just.
No, I just would close with this. We've got great neighbors, and I don't think anyone has an issue with the underlying project here, or with us. And we've operated with transparency in both directions. Our only concern is preemptive actions that don't fit what we're proposing today, given that if it's room expansion, for example, there is an opportunity to come back through this process and for everyone to be heard and considered, as would anyone granted the retreat designation. And to add an additional layer of requirement on us is unfair.
Thank you, sir. Bill, I'm sorry to.
I just want to make a point about the process and special exception. Many times. Special exceptions are evaluated for the particular location. The Board of Appeals is well within its rights by law, as set out by the land use ordinance, to place wide and various conditions on those uses, because each use is considered to be unique because of its particular location. So unless applicant's counsel has case law that kind of redefines some of the things I'm talking about, it's not about being fair. It's not a permitted use by right in the same sense as others. It's evaluated based on its specific and particular place, and there may well be conditions that are appropriate for that wouldn't be appropriate for any other similar use in a different location. So that's correct. Okay. I just want to kind of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Very
Bill-
discretionary with the board.
Thank you.
One question, Bill.
Ma'am.
Are there any other retreats in Kent County?
Any question for Carla?
I believe that both Brampton and the Inn at Huntingfield have the retreat designation.
I don't think Brompton does.
Years ago, Drayton Manor was a retreat, wasn't it? Long time ago.
Well, a long time ago, it was a private club, and they had their own airfield, and they brought in all the stars from Hollywood, and they had gambling. It was a casino and a bar, and all that stuff. Oh, great, no, I'm sorry, Great Oak Manor.
I'd said Drayton, because Drayton was a retreat center at one time.
I can't comment on Drayton. I don't know how its designations changed over the years.
There was no gambling or drinking in the Methodist retreat house in Drayton Manor, except when we snuck out. No.
Yeah, let me say something.
Go ahead.
Due to what I listened up here and heard from the neighbors, they're most concerned is noise and traffic and the road. That's what they're most concerned about. They speak highly of Mr. Wolf. And I'm quite sure that he will work with the neighbors to make sure everything is satisfied with them. As far as the road, repairing the road, I think, this is my point, I think that the neighbors themselves and Mr. Wolf, all of you be a part of something and get it straight and lay there and say, this is what we need to do to prepare the road. I'm quite sure through him, this neighbor will come to agreement. Everything will be perfect. As far as the noise, like he said, it's coming from Great Oak, not him. As far as the guest room, he's not planning on building no more guest rooms, but you're looking, from what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, you figuring, you looking, but what if another owner come? Then they gotta come here. They gotta come here for us to say, well, we're not gonna agree with you. You can't do it. He's not planning on building no more room. All he planning on doing, putting the kitchen in. And I don't think that he has to go through all of these changes and everything to put a kitchen in. And his time is running out. When the bad weather comes, he can't put it in. He can't dig it. He can't put the footer in. He can't do nothing. So it's a time limit there. And I feel as though we, as members of this committee, and we as members of Kent County, that we should give him the opportunity to do it without any stipulation. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Bill, can you hear us?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
You know, it just seems to me like the whole question are these conditions that are being put on there. And quite frankly, under Article 5, Section 3, it says that prior to granting any special exception, the board, or where applicable, the planning director may impose such conditions and restrictions upon the different things. And it goes down and it says limited, but or not limited, but some of the following, and they list 12, 5 of which Carla has in hers. I just, you know, we always end up with these things, and 5 years from now, someone comes before us with a site plan, and first thing they say is, we're allowed by right. And we keep using these special exceptions. They used to be called conditional uses. And we could put conditions on them, and in this case, you still can. And if they want to expand this building later, they come back before this planning commission and the Board of Appeals and the neighbors, maybe the county roads. Someone may have opinions on that, and they can voice them then. But this piece of property has a extremely small road going into it. You meet a car on this road, one of you is going to get your wheels on the side of the grass, or maybe both of you. We don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but by putting these simple conditions on there, you can protect yourself, and you can protect the adjoining landowners and this applicant with a road maintenance agreements, and have the people that are involved sign off on it. I think that's fairly simple to do. I don't believe any of them wouldn't do it. So I don't see any problem with the conditions that are put on this at all.
Thanks, Bill. I guess I think we've heard different opinions. Paul, do you have anything? Sean, but if not, we should entertain a motion. Carla or Bill, I guess we haven't really addressed concept plan, but I guess after that, we can just make any comments. We did review it, please, or I hope we would, but let's focus on the special exception, and I'll entertain a motion if someone has one for this. The other, just one quick question. The first condition, if they were a retreat, they would be allowed 40 rooms right now. I mean, okay.
Well, subject to permitting. I mean,
Site plan.
The retreat designation, I believe, is 10 to 40.
Yeah.
10 to 40, yes.
It just, the lodging and the land use ordinance is kind of, there are a bunch of different lodging uses, and they break down.
But they would be
based on
approved for
size.
40 right now.
Right, they'd have to, probably if they did expansion, they'd have to meet setback requirements and whatever requirements
Because
you need.
we've already
but-
approved
Right.
cottages out there for a past applicant. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm moving a favorable recommendation to the Appeals Board for the applicant's request for, where are we? For a retreat, special exception to modify his zoning from a county inn to a retreat, and to also do so and also approve the concept site plan that he has proposed. My recommendation is that this favorable recommendation be forwarded to the Appeals Board without any further consideration.
You mean conditions?
Conditions. Finding those to be preemptive and unnecessary, that they can be easily negotiated between the applicant and the neighborhood association. This recommendation is made on the basis of the fact that this request conforms with the comprehensive plan, that sufficient parking is available to serve the needs, current and anticipated needs for parking, that the number of guest rooms, there's no plan for additional expansion of the guest rooms, that the Board of Appeals has determined that the public and governmental service is available and adequate, that the applicant has designed the proposed building in keeping with the historic nature and with respect to the character of the neighborhood. View considerations were given, view corridors were given adequate consideration in the placement of the proposed building, that with the exception of a small wooden deck overlooking the bay, all structures are at least 100 feet from the property line, that new amenities will include a demonstration kitchen and yoga studio in the proposed building, and that any other additional amenities would require approval of an amendment to this special exception. We also note that 60% of the site will remain open space, that parking for lodging guests will be located near the manor house and is currently screened. The overflow parking area will be left as a grass field, and the applicant will screen that area from adjacent properties. Finally, the site plan and building elevations for the proposed building have been provided and have been reviewed by this commission.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
A second. Any discussion?
Got a question. Within your motion, you say this is also, you're covering the site plan?
Correct.
Well, that's a concept plan.
It's a concept plan.
It's kind of covered in there, but I think we should note that after this, is that.
Okay, we also,
We owe the
we've also
architect
taken that
something.
into consideration. I'm prepared to amend my motion if necessary.
I think that's fine. I think you've addressed it anyway a little bit, but
Okay.
we should do concept. We probably should have done it first.
Okay, we can treat
But-
that as a separate matter.
Okay, we have, any further discussion?
Again, unfortunately, we're in the position where we're making the designation that again, allows them to go up to 40 units, and really, I don't think that's the intent of anybody here, but with doing that with absolutely no restrictions or conditions, I think is a mistake at this point. So I would, again, just my
Sean,
thoughts.
there,
Wait,
Again, it's my
that's-
thoughts.
we got a
That was discussion.
discussion motion. Okay, we got a motion and a second. I'll call a question. Paula Reeder,
Aye.
Paul Rugi,
No.
Bill Crowdy,
No.
Sean Jones,
No.
James Saunders,
Yes.
and I'll vote with the majority. So we turn down we always have this, we have a negative favorable request, do we have to, or?
So the motion fails.
Right.
So nothing's going forward.
Right, you can entertain another motion. For example, you could entertain a motion to approve with conditions. That option is available to you.
Technically, you haven't taken an action yet.
Okay, all right. Does
Mr.
anyone?
Chairman,
You go ahead.
I make a motion that we send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Appeals of Great Oak Manor for their request to change a special exception from a country inn on their proposed 15.7 or 271 acre parcel to build an accessory structure for demonstrations of kitchen and yoga studio with the following conditions: that no more than 15 guest rooms are permitted without prior approval to expand the retreat use. No parking for events is permitted on Cliff Road. No maintenance facilities or equipment is visible from outside the property. The limits on hours for outdoor events, and a road maintenance agreement for Cliff Road is signed by all property owners of record.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, any discussion?
Yes. First of all, the county is rife with private roads.
Wait, discussion on the motion now, we don't, this is, we're ready.
Well, one of the things that's proposed is a road maintenance agreement. My discussion is regarding the way that road maintenance agreements have been handled on private roads historically in this county. Historically, private roads, there's a homeowners association associated with a private road that takes responsibility for addressing, creating a road maintenance agreement and making assessments and collecting assessments for road maintenance on an annual basis. Why that has not been done with respect to this neighborhood is, I don't understand why that hasn't been done previous to this point in time. And I would say we should put it on the homeowners association to take responsibility for leading that effort as opposed to applying it as a special condition.
Okay, we have a motion, and did you second?
I did second,
Okay,
yes.
any further discussion? I'll call the question. Bill Crowding,
Aye.
James Saunders, Sean Jones,
Yes.
Paul Ruge,
All right,
Paula Reeder,
No.
and I'll vote with the affirmative. So we'll send a favorable recommendation with conditions to the Board of Appeals for their, and as they, counsel, and that they can further do that or amend it too, I guess. So, thank you all. Concept. In general, I looked at the plans. I think they look lovely. They are in concert with the Great Oak, I think. It looks like it would be an attractive addition without impacting the manor, my opinion. I don't know if anyone else has comments.
Just for clarification, was Mr. Crowling's motion, did that include approval of the concept plan?
No,
did not.
it did not.
That's why, concept's concept. We don't approve it. We just discuss it. Did everyone look at the plans from
Yeah.
Georgia?
Yes.
I mean,
They look fine.
I've got a couple questions, only because I am familiar with the manor and whatever, but the residence that's off to the, as you're driving in, that's off to the left, is that a private residence, or is that?
That's part of the property.
It's part of the property, I know, but I was always under the impression before that it was a private residence.
It is.
But it is. He owns it, though.
I'm sorry?
It is a private residence
it's
owned by, yeah.
And it's a separate lot.
So is it a separate lot? It is a separate lot, so it's not included in the combining of three lots that you're doing here?
It would be.
Yes.
It would be, so that's all gonna be one. So what are your future plans for that?
I think he didn't have to talk about it.
Well, I'm just curious, that's all. We can talk later. But you are making a good 50, it should be all one lot. I would agree with that. I like that. And the parking, I don't know, that's the only thing that bothers me now. It's out by, it's out a little bit close to to Cliff Road, where you're trying to hide everything that's going on, but now you'll have a parking lot full of cars next to the road. So maybe there's some other place to put it, I guess is where I'm going. You've got a parking lot there for what, 27, 30 cars, something like that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point out that the overflow parking area is in the same location that had been approved at one point for a previous owner.
Right, the field.
It will have to be landscaped, though.
Yeah, but he's just got it moved out closer to, it's set up differently and moved out closer to the road than what was there before. That's all. I was trying to get him, my thought would be to move it back a little bit so that it's not quite as in view.
So it is near the road, but it's not on the road. There's a septic area between the road and the parking area, and we can't move it back any further because there's existing woods that we're not going to take down for the parking. So we're just trying to utilize the existing lawn area that's available. Certainly don't want it closer to the water, so the closer it is to the road, the better it is
I
for.
was just looking to get a little bit more buffer so that it's not,
Yeah, well, then we would have to clear trees. So we'd prefer to.
I mean, that was my thoughts. And quite honestly, is there a homeowners association out there? Is it an actual?
Wait a minute, we're getting on to
Yeah,
different
I
things.
don't
All
know.
right. Then
Any other-
we won't discuss it.
Any other concept plan questions?
Nope.
All right, our next application is William and Linda Joyce, and this is a variance for steep slope and expanded buffer.
Thank you all for your time.
Hold a second, Mark, while the crowd, go ahead. Well, Jim, we can wait a few, go ahead. We can wait a few minutes. Anyone else needs to get some refreshment or something? How are you, Mark? Bill, we're taking a little break.
I think he's been on permanent break. It's not even him. He doesn't respond to most things. Background picture.
Yeah. You see Gimberling sold, is that the main part of it?
And who bought it?
Stolfus, John Stolfus. He had that 1031 from the solar.
Oh.
The Jones Dairy, real Jones Dairy, the original Jones Dairy.
Oh, yeah. I thought truck drivers would be calling you. I had one pull in the lane. They go, getting something delivered. I'm like, that ain't for me. Yep, the truck's going out there. That's all. They kept coming to us.
When I worked at Citizen Queens 30 years ago, they installed Jones Dairy World, and I'm thinking, so now, this is what people say, God, Jones farming Queen Anne's, they call it Jones Dairy. I said, nah.
Not us.
What is it? We all ready to go? I'm sorry. All right, Mark, go ahead. Bill, we're back. Maybe he's gone now.
There he is.
All right, good. Thanks, Mark, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Carpenter, Associate Planner with the county. As you mentioned, we have before us an application by William and Linda Joyce. They're wishing to build a carport which is ADA accessible to their primary dwelling and some associated structures along with that. Other sites on the property were considered for placement of such a carport. This is most appropriate in achieving the aims of such a structure. It's made problematic by the presence of steep slopes around the dwelling. Those steep slopes also created an expansion of the buffer. So development within those areas do require a variance, so this application is for a variance to fulfill that desire. They submitted a site plan showing the proposed structures, and review that. They've submitted a landscaping plan. The landscaping plan adequately addresses all the mitigation requirements for what they're proposing. In regards to a variance, there are a set of criteria that need to be examined, which are listed in the staff report. The comments that we have from staff and TAC are as follows. The Kent County Health Department has no objections to this application. There are no known detriments to adjacent or neighboring properties or change in the character of the neighborhood will be caused by the proposed variance. The proposed variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The practical difficulty, as I mentioned before, it's not created by the applicants, but it has to do with the presence of the steep slopes. No foreseeable adverse impacts would be caused to water quality, fish, wildlife, or plant habitats. The application has been sent to the Critical Area Commission for review. The proposed variance would provide for continued safe and ADA accessible use of the property, and the strict application of the ordinance would produce an unwarranted hardship. The hardship is not known to be shared by other properties within the vicinity or as a common feature in the zoning district. A literal interpretation of the ordinance would deprive the applicants of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in similar areas within the critical area of Kent County, and the variance would not confer upon the applicants any special privilege. Therefore, staff recommends forwarding a favorable recommendation to the Board of Appeals for approval of this variance request.
Thank you. Any comment, any letters or
No, sir.
correspondence? Okay, thank you. Is the applicant and/or reps here?
Long way up. We could, do we have wireless mic? Maybe we could hand the applicant.
You're halfway here, Bill. You're halfway here.
Miles, you're already sworn in, I think.
Okay.
I hope we get continuations on that, but I don't know. Sir, you want,
I
is
do.
the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And name and address for the record.
William F. Joyce, 29349 Glencoe Road.
Great. And we got Miles already on the tape. Go ahead.
Thank you.
What do you want to tell us about?
Now I want you to say yes.
Yeah. You get paid now.
That's right. Mark summarized the project pretty well. Currently, the way the driveway is configured at the Joyce's house, it's a gravel driveway. It's some distance and on a slope from where the gravel driveway is now to the steps then that lead to their front door or their back door. So we'd like to build just a carport, no walls, just a roof, which John Hutcherson has designed, and build that carport so that it attaches to another structure, which happens to be their screen porch. And then we've designed it so that you can come out of the carport at the same level as the carport and then down a slight grade on a wooden ramp that will then connect with an existing deck that's outside their back door, their kitchen door, which will then allow them access into the house. So the goal of the project is simply to provide an accessible route from their vehicle into their house. And as you can see from the drawings, and Mark mentioned, we've looked at other sites on the property where you could potentially put a building that's not in the buffer, that's not on steep slopes, and none of those really make sense from a practical standpoint or from an architectural standpoint. And so that leaves us with the carport where we've designed it, which happen to be slopes over 15%, which are considered steep slopes. And then because those slopes are there, it's also expanded the buffer, so this structure would then be in the buffer. And then we have a little retaining wall that comes off the side just to tie the grades in once we're finished, so that the driveway can come down, obviously, and into the carport.
Anything you'd like to say, sir, about the application?
No, other than that, I think it's really a necessary thing for us. We have been in that house, in that location since 1996, and I guess when we moved in, it was a lot easier to get to other parts of it than it is now. And it's become a hardship. It's real difficult to get in and out of the house, to get groceries in and out of the house. And we've had a couple bad falls, dangerous falls in process, which have led us to, wanting to do this. Navigating the steps, you never really quite know when you do fall. It's you're kind of down before you know it happens, and you can hurt yourself really pretty badly. So it's a way to stay where we want to be. We've been here in Kent County for 30 years now, and this is where we hope to stay for the rest of our lives. And we'd like to be able to have it be comfortable, safe more than anything for both of us.
Good. Any thoughts on the variance or the need? I think the staff has outlined and the applicant of the need, and then the practical difficulty being the slopes. And I think one thing that's important here is that the unwarranted hardship for someone that wants to be ADA compliant. And
I'm prepared to make a motion.
thank you.
I move that we send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Appeals for approval of the variance requested by William and Linda Joyce to construct an ADA-compliant carport, retaining wall, driveway, and wooden walkway on a slope greater than 15% and in an expanded buffer within the critical area. We find that the request has been approved by the county health department has no objections to the application. There's no known detriment to adjacent or neighboring properties or change in the character of the neighborhood that would be caused by the proposed variance. The proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The practical difficulty, which has not been created by the applicants, is created by the steep slope around the main house, including a ravine on the east side of the property causing the buffer expansion. There is no known adverse impact to water quality, fish, wildlife, or plant habitat that would be caused by the proposed variance. The application has been sent to the Critical Area Commission for review, and the proposed variance would provide for continued safe and ADA accessible use of the property, and strict application of the ordinance would produce an unwarranted hardship. This hardship is not known to be shared by other properties within the vicinity or as a common feature in the zoning district, and a literal interpretation of the ordinance would deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in similar areas within the critical area of Kent County. The variance also would not confer on the applicants any special privilege that would be denied to other lands or structured.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Only thing I can say, the way what's going on with you and your wife, I hope everything turn out right. But just build what you want. That's what I say. To make your life more suitable. That's all.
Okay. Call the question. Paul Reeder?
Aye.
Paul Ruge?
Aye.
Sean Jones?
Aye.
James Saunders?
Aye.
Bill Crowning?
Aye.
All right, and I'll vote with the majority. So thank you. Got great plans and great explanation. I'm
Thank you
glad you're
very much.
glad you're going to add to the tax base in Kent County with these improvements.
Take your time.
Any staff reports? Carla? Rob? Mark? No. Smacking it. Beth? All right.
I move that this meeting
I think that was all planned.
I think we had a motion here.
Motion to adjourn.
No, he already did that.
Oh, did he?